All right, let's move on to the Gridiron Blitz portion of our show where we go over all things NFL. Training camps have opened up within the past week or so. Everyone's in training sessions and going through everything that's going on. I think I have to be very careful with training camp news. And I use this as a specific example. I'm not picking on the guy, but you see reports from the Dallas Cowboys about Micah Parsons, the first round linebacker out of Penn State, saying he's showing some flashes and that he's showing some tremendous movement and doing really well in practice. Here's the thing about training camp, and if you've ever been to a training camp practice, and I have been, not really this year with the Falcons. There's a lot of reasons for that, with just availability and access and other things going on. But if you go to practice, as far as media members, which you get a lot of reports on of players flashing and doing well, here's the deal. You go to practice, you may get some first 5 or 10 minutes of being able to view it. You have guys stretching, doing some calisthenics, and loosening up for the practice. And then you're kicked out of the practice and told to go wait in the media room or wherever they do. And then you might be able to come back and see the last 5 or 10 minutes, which is a lot of special teams, and you're seeing that type of stuff. Nothing that's really going to be groundbreaking or earth shattering. So you don't really get to see a lot of the big time stuff. And furthermore, the first few days of practice, yes, they're starting to see some padded practices, but you're not going to see any. Well, I'll get to the New York Giants in a moment. Usually, you don't see too much craziness going on with the first padded practices. So when you hear these reports of this guy looked really good or this guy's really struggling, now you might get some assistant coaches or you may get a player that's a snitch, well, not a snitch, but someone that talks to a media member and gives maybe some insight. But a lot of times you rarely hear the negative side of things when it comes to those reviews because one, you haven't really shown too much right now, unless a guy comes in really bad condition, out of shape, and just cannot play. Period. It takes a little bit longer for that to take place than 2 or 3 practices. But you hope that what I'm trying to say is that and then with Michael Parsons, you're going to get a lot of, that's probably a leak from one of the GM, maybe Jerry Jones, somebody saying that, oh man, he's looking really good, just to get some positive energy and to get some good vibes as you go through the practices of training camp. So be very careful when you see the reports of those training camp analysis because you're not getting as much access, or the media members that you're listening to, and it's not their fault. That's just the way the operations are with the teams. They're not. It's not as much as you would think. Now, what you can report on and discuss are injuries, and the Colts are going through that right now. Carson Wentz, the former quarterback of the Eagles, his history, struggling to stay on the field, gets traded to the Colts with his former offensive coordinator Frank Wright, who from Philadelphia, who's now the head coach at Philadelphia at Indianapolis. He's been in all off season doing his thing, breaks his foot. All pro guard Quenton Nelson, first 3 years in the NFL, first team All Pro, probably the best offensive lineman in the NFL, and only guys, and I know three of them, and I'm trying to remember the other one. Only guys since 1970, All Pro, first team All Pro, first 3 years of their career. Lawrence Taylor, Barry Sanders, Earl Campbell, Quenton Nelson, and there's another guy that I am forgetting, and that's really sad. I think Ricky Jackson might be the other one. Yeah, those are the only guys All Pro first 3 years, first team All Pro, first 3 years of their career. Nelson's in that spot, so he's elite. Same broken foot, same exact injury as Carson Wentz, which you can't make up. Just you have Wentz with all of his injury issues of the past, and then Nelson, who's been as durable as you can be, same injury to the same foot injury. Both are going to be out 5 to 12 weeks. I think Nelson, he'll be back in 5 weeks. Offensive lineman, that's just how they roll. He misses a training camp. He's not going to learn. He can always learn and grow. But if anything, maybe not being in camp and playing preseason games He saves his body. He'll be fresher for the regular season. He may miss the first week, but he'll be playing pretty soon, I think, in the regular season. As far as Carson Wentz goes, as I said, the guy's had, the ACL injury. He's had dealt with the back injury. He's had almost every injury you can have as a quarterback in the NFL. And you thought that with a fresh start in Indianapolis, he could avoid that. Now, the good news for him is that it's early in the season. So he can theoretically, if you do the calendar, if he's out 5 weeks, he can only miss maybe the first game of the regular season, maybe by game 2 or 3. He could be back if it's on the early side of that timetable. Now, if it goes towards the double digit weeks, you're looking at maybe missing the first month of the year. And that's not good for everybody involved, at least especially for the Colts and Wentz. That's why you're starting to see the Phillip Rivers rumors come back. And yes, I know the easy joke is that he retired and he's home with the 9 kids. He literally has 9 children. That's not hyperbole. He's home with the 9 children. He's high school coach in Alabama, and that's not a joke. He is coaching high school in his home state of Alabama. He got home, realized that all the kids are around, dealing with high schoolers, and he's like, "Get me back to an NFL camp immediately. I can't deal with retirement." That was the running joke when he retired. Now with this injury, you're thinking he can go back to the Colts, and he even hinted at it. He said he's staying ready, and I know he's retired and he's not in game shape, and he probably didn't have too active of off-season training. But if he gets in camp this week, you give him a few weeks of training camp, he already knows the system. That's the good part. And that's why the Colts are the obvious choice. He played there last year, had a solid year, led him to a postseason appearance. He can go back to the Colts and be back where he left off. And the Colts are a very good team. They are a playoff caliber team. Their defense is top 5 in the NFL under all the statistics. Solid running game, excellent offensive line, even with Nelson with his injury. As I said, he should be back by the early part of the regular season, you would think. That's a team that could be contention for that division. Honestly, the Titans you probably figure are the division champions. They brought in Julio Jones. They're continuing to build and evolve. So they're probably the favorites to win that AFC South. But the Colts could be a postseason team as well. Do I see that with Jacob Eason being their starting quarterback for a good amount of the season? I don't know about that. So I think if you bring Rivers in, and I think the controversy would not be as big. Even he's not going to go 4-0. He's not going to, because he didn't do that when he was playing last year before he retired. He could be solid. He can win a game or two, and Wentz comes back and you're 2-2. That's not the worst thing in the world. You're okay. Ed Rivers will not kick and scream to be back starting. I think he'll be very content being in that backup role this year, and he might even be content going home after Wentz comes back and is healthy and ready to play. I'd keep him on the roster the rest of the year because with Wentz, you never know with him. He just gets so injury prone. And the high school, look, that'll be there for the rest of his life. He'll go back to high school coaching next year. The children, they're settled in Alabama. He'll be okay being away from them for a few months. And I'm not saying that sarcastically because he hates being around his children. He loves his children. He's very open about it. But NFL season is only a few months, so they're used to it. He'll be okay being away from there for a few months. So I think the Wentz injury, obviously, worry long term with them, and that's a lot of money owed to him in his contract. But I think if he is unavailable for the short term, you get Rivers in there. I think the Colts could be okay. Now to the New York Giants, who I grew up a Giants fan. I still like the New York Giants, even though it's more neutral now with just following the teams objectively. But I do like to seeing the Giants do well. Like the Joe Judge situation, we know he came in, former special teams coordinator for the Patriots. He has a very gruff approach to things, like this tough guy, mentality. Last year they showed some life. I think, and last year was really rough. Saquon Barkley obviously torn ACL out for a majority of the season. That doesn't help. He's your best player on the team. But defensively, we saw them make some strides and be solid. it all comes down to Daniel Jones, of course, the quarterback, who I still have a lot of doubt about. But you look at the structure of the team and the infrastructure, they're okay. And Judge, as I said, he's a rookie coach last year, and so you got to look at it objectively and see he can grow and improve. But just the stories out of camp, the past now, this is where the media does you get some good insight from these type of things because you hear stuff, and if your ears to the ground as any beat reporter, you're going to hear this stuff even if you don't quote unquote see it. But yeah, them having their padded practice and doing a big pile up, and Daniel Jones, the quarterback, being at the bottom of it. That's the one rule in practice that everyone knows: you do not touch the quarterback under any circumstances. So the fact that they had a scuffle, or now I didn't mind that there was a fight in practice. That happens every other day. There's scuffles, there's shoving, but when your quarterback's in the middle of it, it ends up in the bottom of a pile, that's not a good situation. So when they have that happen, he gets mad. He has everyone at at the goal line doing push-ups and running sprinters or running whatever you call them, suicide drills or running sprints like they're in middle school or high school or college, I guess, doing drills or doing punishment for those type of situations. That seems very collegiate and high schoolish to me. These guys professionals. That's not the right way to approach it. Now, is there a way to punish them or not reprimand them for doing that type of stuff? As I said, including the pileup of Daniel Jones, which you can't have happen. There's probably better ways to do that, but to go with that old school, or not even old school, but just the elementary type things of running gassers or doing push-ups and sit-ups and all that type of stuff. I don't know how well that's going to be received by professional athletes. So you'll kind of worry about that type of deal. And I've seen this argument as well. This is going to build toughness and bring an attitude to the team and all this other stuff. I think in maybe the 80s and the 90s, even maybe a few years ago, that would have been more. You saw that a lot more. It's a different era with players and different approach to things. There's just a better way, I think, of doing that. But in the not defend them, but on Judge's side of things, they last year, as I said, they may have not played necessarily well on the field, but they were disciplined. You saw them work hard and they gave effort. And he knows his team. He has the pulse of them better than I ever can sitting here in Atlanta, Georgia. But that you just hear those reports and you see that type of stuff. You got to be very careful with that dealing with professionals because they will turn on you very quickly with that, especially if they don't win necessarily as much as they think they should. He's working a very fine line with that approach to things. But outside of that, no other major news coming out of the NFL. You go back to our previous show, and we posted it as well on our YouTube page. Whole Aaron Rodgers saga, with him coming back to the Packers. As I said, once he showed up on campus or in the camp, he had his press conference. He vented or did whatever he said he had. He felt he said what he had to say. After that, they're doing what they have to do. Packers are still a major contender in the NFC, and he's going to go to play his best, and they'll keep it moving. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the NFL as far as the Gridiron Blitz goes, and let's transition on.